Some people believe miracles are rare, that they only happen to others, that they need a stage, a crowd, or big heroic acts. But what if I told you that the greatest miracle can begin with just a handful of corn and a willing heart? That's right. No spotlight, just faith in hard times and a quiet act of love. Sounds too simple to be true, doesn't it? Today you'll hear a touching real story that doesn't sound real, but it is. A woman. An abandoned village. And a moment of giving without expecting that shook the heavens. Stick around, because this story won't just move you, it'll challenge you. Because if a poor, lonely old woman could change the fate of an entire village, what are you doing with what you have? Watch until the end. What happens in the final moments might flip a switch inside you. A hidden miracle could be closer than you think, and maybe, just maybe, it's waiting on your first move. It was early morning when Dona Esperanza, an elderly woman with wrinkled hands and a generous heart, realized something. All she had left was a handful of corn. That was it. In a dry, forgotten village where even the wind carried away prayers, she decided to turn it into a miraculous atole, just like in the old days. The recipe: corn, memory, and faith in hard times. Each grain held a memory of when her home echoed with the laughter of her grandchildren and the smell of burning firewood. As the pot bubbled, Dona Esperanza stared into the emptiness of her home, but in it, she saw the ghosts of a life once full. Yet this wasn't just about surviving. It was quiet resistance. It was her way of saying, God never forgets. And in that moment, a hidden miracle was already brewing. Sometimes, what feels small becomes sacred when given with intention. Think about it. How often do we cling to what little we have, afraid of having even less tomorrow? But what if that little is exactly where the miracle begins? This touching real story shows us that the power of giving doesn't start with abundance, it starts with courage in scarcity. A small act can shift everything. And maybe, even heaven was already watching that pot. Later that day, under the scorching sun, a faint knock came at Dona Esperanza's door. It was a little girl, sunburned skin, hollow eyes. She didn't ask for money, or clothes, just something warm. The old woman looked at the last plate of miraculous atole and the only tortilla left in her basket. Without hesitation, she gave it all. And smiled. Because those with a generous heart don't see giving as loss, they see it as dignity. The girl drank the atole as if receiving a divine blessing. Then, with a strange light in her eyes, she softly said, God never forgets those who give without measure. Those words were etched into Dona Esperanza's soul. It's in these quiet moments that life teaches its deepest lessons. When you give without expecting, you touch realms unseen. And that's when the hidden miracle begins to unfold. So now I ask you, what have you been giving? Maybe it's a kind word, help at the grocery store, time to truly listen. Have you ever brought soup to someone in need? Visited a nursing home? A hungry child doesn't need speeches, just one honest act. And the world, believe it, responds. Because deep down, every woman of faith knows. God never forgets a heart that gives freely. And that night, something unseen had already begun to move. The next morning, Dona Esperanza woke up to her usual routine, expecting nothing. But when she opened her pantry, her eyes welled up with tears, sacks of corn, baskets of fruit, stacked firewood, and jugs of fresh water. All there, like heaven had made a special delivery. This wasn't luck. It was a mountain miracle, triggered by a genuine, quiet act of kindness. A hidden miracle taking form in the ordinary. She fell to her knees, touching each item as if they were treasures. Because when you've faced real hunger, even a jug of clean water feels like gold. Her tears weren't just of emotion, but of hope in scarcity. She knew this was a divine blessing, a direct answer to her choice the day before. And the best part? She didn't hoard it. She decided to share. Because someone with a generous heart knows, miracles rot when kept, but they bloom when shared. And what if the solution to your life is hidden in a small act of generosity? So many people wait for a big miracle without realizing it starts with a small move. Share your talent. Donate time. Teach a child. Feed someone. When a woman and a child meet at the door of kindness, the universe leans in. And what came next would change the whole village. Word spread quickly, Dona Esperanza was sharing food. Hungry children lined up with shining eyes. Mothers teared up as they received warm tortillas and portions of the miraculous atole. It felt like the village's heart was beating again. For the first time in ages, there was hope in scarcity. But not everyone celebrated. In the corner, Dona Pura watched with suspicion. She had hoarded supplies but never shared a crumb. Envy is quiet at first, but it poisons deep. While some saw a divine blessing, others whispered in fear and jealousy. Where did she get it all? Did she make a pact? They asked. Dona Pura, who always had more than enough, now felt threatened by someone with almost nothing. That's how envy and redemption begins, not with a fight, but with a heart that can't handle another's light. And look, this isn't just a story. In real life, we see it all the time. People judging kindness, mocking generosity. Have you ever felt side-eyed just for doing good? Maybe your hidden miracle is already growing, and others just don't recognize it. But what happens when people try to take what was never theirs to begin with? You're about to find out. When envy grows, it spreads like fire. Soon, rumors turned into plans. Some said Dona Esperanza had dark secrets. Others swore the girl was a spirit in disguise. Her touching real story was twisted into something ugly. And just like that, the village, once fed by her kindness, turned against her. Because the power of giving unsettles those who live only to keep. One moonless night, angry fists pounded on her door. They broke in like thieves, grabbing everything: corn, fruit, wood, even her last tortilla. But they didn't stop there. They humiliated her, calling her names, forcing her out of her home. They left her in an old livestock pen, surrounded by dust and silence. Yet even there, Dona Esperanza held on to her faith, calm and unbroken. You know, this reminds us, not everyone who claps for you is really for you. Sometimes life strips everything away just to see what you truly believe. And faith, real faith, doesn't show when you're full. It shows when you've lost it all. What the villagers didn't realize was that the real miracle was never in the pantry. It was in her. And soon, they would feel the cost of forgetting that. It didn't take long. After the theft, things began to rot. Water turned bitter. Food spoiled overnight. The children who once danced in the street now coughed and whimpered. The divine blessing had vanished. What they stole couldn't be kept, because miracles can't be taken, only received with humility. The village's punishment wasn't hunger, it was the loss of grace. Suddenly, the people who had taken so much walked with lowered heads. Mothers wept for their children. Fathers whispered behind closed doors. There was no logic to it, no explanation. Just a strange, holy silence. Forgotten gratitude had a price, and they were paying it with pain and shame. It's a brutal reminder, isn't it? How often do we take what we didn't earn? How often do we forget the source of our blessings? Gratitude isn't just about saying, thanks, it's about living like you remember where the gift came from. And in that collective silence, a flicker of regret began to glow. And that glow would lead them back to where they never should have strayed. The silence in the village became unbearable. Those same voices that once judged her now whispered her name with guilt. A small group walked to the old pen where Dona Esperanza stayed. She was sitting, calmly stitching, as if she already knew they would come. Her eyes held no resentment, only tired peace. When they asked for forgiveness, she said, "Your mistake wasn't banishing me, it was banishing God from your hearts." That was the life lesson they'd never forget. Without hesitation, Dona Esperanza stood up to return. She didn't demand apologies or repayment. She only asked that they never again forget to be grateful. Her steps were slow, but her soul was immense. And those walking beside her didn't see just an old woman, they saw a woman of faith, someone who carried the miracle in her very being. Giving without expecting was her greatest power. Now ask yourself, could you forgive like that? True forgiveness isn't forgetting, it's freedom. Freedom from anger. Freedom from revenge. It takes a generous heart to rise above. And slowly, the village realized, maybe the miracle wasn't gone after all. With her return, the village changed. Corn sprouted. Water flowed sweet again. Fruit ripened. But none of that compared to the compassion that bloomed among them. For the first time, compassion became the new miracle. People smiled more. Kids shared. Neighbors helped without needing a reason. Dona Esperanza had brought them something richer than food. She swept her yard, cooked her miraculous atole, traded seeds, taught children. No sermons. No big speeches. Just a life lived with unconditional love. The true divine blessing was that she never let bitterness grow. She simply continued being who she always was, even when no one deserved it. And you? What do you have to offer today? A skill, a kind word, a prayer, a smile. In a world hungry for connection, compassion is the richest currency. That once forgotten village was now fertile again. And yet, one final revelation would still take their breath away. One quiet morning, a familiar face appeared at Dona Esperanza's gate. The little girl. But now, she was different. There was something in her eyes, timeless. She didn't say much. Just handed her a bouquet of wildflowers and whispered, "You passed the test." That's when Dona Esperanza knew, this child was no ordinary girl. She was a child sent by God, sent to test the weight of her heart. She didn't fall to her knees or scream. She simply smiled with tears in her eyes and whispered, "God never forgets those who give without measure." That was the perfect closure to a story that began with a handful of corn and a generous heart. What seemed like nothing had touched heaven. And now, heaven had responded, not with thunder, but with flowers. Stories like these remind us, heaven sees the small things. What looks like just a kind gesture might be your hidden miracle unfolding. A life lesson sealed with flowers and silence. And maybe the next time someone knocks on your door, you'll see them for who they truly are. If a forgotten woman, with nothing but love, could move heaven, why not you? Dona Esperanza's story proves that miracles don't depend on how much we have, only on how much we give. So ask yourself, have I been living with a generous heart, or just waiting for things to change first? How many blessings might you have missed simply by forgetting to be grateful? Could the scarcity you feel, in your wallet or in your soul, be a sign to give more, not less? Now's the time to act. One small step. One real decision. Because God never forgets. Now I want to hear from you. What part of this story moved you the most? Drop a comment. Share it with someone who needs to remember the power of giving. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications, because each story here is meant to wake up something inside you.